In this tutorial, we're going to be looking at sports massage for shoulder impingement, so how we go about rehabilitating that, or more specifically, how I would go about rehabilitating that. We're going to look at the anatomy. We'll go through a quick assessment, so the type of things I would cover within that assessment, and then talk about the treatment itself and how I would go about performing that and putting all that together. When it comes to the anatomy of a shoulder impingement, obviously we're talking about the shoulder, but we're talking about specific tissues that are involved. When it comes to the sports massage, we'll talk about some more tissues, but with regards to just the injury, what we've got is the supraspinatus, which is a muscle, and its tendon. So the supraspinatus goes along the top of the shoulder blade. So what you can do is you can put your hand on your back, sort of feel where the top of your shoulder blade is, and then there's a sort of a ridge which you would press down on the inside of, and then that would be your supraspinatus muscle down in there. It's obviously covered by another muscle called the trapezius, but that's the muscle and the tendon that we're talking about. So it's this muscle, then the tendon that goes right along and then joins on to the top of the arm bone, which is known as the humerus. What you've then got is you've got a bursa and the AC joint, which is the acromioclavicular joint. So the AC joint is here, and then the bursa sits underneath it, which is basically a pad, if you will. Now, what's happening with regards to the injury is this tendon and the bursa is being compressed between the AC joint and the humerus, which is then creating inflammation and then creating pain. So what we need to be able to do is release that tension. So what we will talk about, where this is the actual site of the injury, there is going to be some residual tension and tightness going throughout the shoulder, which will need to be addressed as well. So we'll talk about that when we come to the treatment. What we'll talk about next is the assessment. The type of things I would be looking for, so it would be a sort of an observation. So I would just look at your general posture, so the position of the shoulder blade, the position of the shoulders, is one higher than the other, is one further forward than the other, so on and so forth. So something on that would be like the winging of a scapula, which is essentially you've got the two shoulder blades where one sort of raises up off the back. So I'd be looking at things like that. Then range of movement, so just general range of movement, shoulder flexion, shoulder extension, with particular focus on external rotation. Also look at internal rotation as well. And then you've got more specific tests like the Neers and the Hawkins test. But I don't need to show you what those are because that would be for the assessment itself. And then finally, palpation, which is sort of calculated and specific prodding. Not a scientific term, but palpation is. Or technical term, but yes, essentially it's prodding to find areas of tension, areas of sensitivity, so on and so forth. So places that we would palpate would be insertions of the supraspinatus, which is essentially sort of in this area here on the front of the shoulder, and then you've got infraspinatus, which is on the back of the shoulder blade, so you can get trigger points that sort of come across the top here and down here. Now these come about not as a direct occurrence of the injury or the impingement, but more so as a residual tension. So it will depend on how long you've had it. So the longer you've had it, in some respects sort of further away from the problem we would go with regards to the residual tightness and tension. Then you've got the trapezius. Now the trapezius muscle isn't necessarily on here, but this is your right shoulder. So if you can imagine a muscle coming off sort of the shoulder blade there, it will cover here, it will go down here, and it's the one that sort of goes up to the neck here. So it's quite a big muscle, covers quite a big area. So this is also what we would look for, is tension through here. You could then even go, if you wanted to, sort of further up, you could go levator scapula, which will start here up into the neck, and you've got scalene as well. Again, it depends on sort of what stage of the injury that you're in. If it's very immediate, you may not have as much residual tightness, but you may. That again is where it comes down to the assessment to find that out. Then you've got pec major, pec minor, which is on the front of the shoulder. So again, it would be in this sort of area. So we've got insertion points up here and in here. So again, we would be looking at those muscles to be able to see if there's any tightness. That will depend on the observation. What was the position of the shoulder like? What's the winging of the scapula like? Things like that. And then you've got deltoid, which is basically the muscle that sits right over the top of all of this. So there's a lot of muscles, there's a lot of tendons, there's a lot of tissues to be looking at and looking for. But again, it all comes down to how it's assessed, finding out where is the tension, where is the tightness, where are the trigger points, where is the pain coming through. Obviously, it would need to be, which is what I'm going to talk about next, starting with supraspinatus, working on that injury, and then working along with the residual tightness that comes along with it. As I've started to mention, when it comes to the treatment of it, so the sports massage therapy, we would be looking at the insertion of the supraspinatus, which again is sort of in this sort of position. So this would be the initial place, plus you can go along the top where the supraspinatus is and work through that muscle. To get to it, you need to go through the trapezius, which sits over the top of it. So you would work on to loosen through there, and then you'll be able to get down into the supraspinatus. You may well find there is some sensitivity generally there. So that would be sort of the first port of call. Then we would start to move away. So we've done trapezius to be able to get to supraspinatus. Then we would start looking at infraspinatus, pec major, pec minor, deltoid. You could even go as far as bicep. Bicep is on the front of the shoulder, but it joins into the front of the shoulder blade and comes down into the arm, and also on the front of the arm. So again, you can get sort of residual tightness through here as well. So again, these are all areas to be looking at. So depending on how the assessment goes would depend on how far we can get in the first treatment. Then it would be coming back for a follow-up session, second treatment, and then because we've gone through the assessment, just be a quick gaining of feedback, quick reassessment, and then getting stuck into the treatment, so we can get through a little bit more in the second, because we haven't got to go through and find out where all the problems are like we did in the first. Plus some goals of what we're trying to create with regards to solving the problem or curing the problem, which is the posture of the shoulder, because it's the posture of the shoulder that will create the problem. So we need to address that and get you into a better posture, because it could be that there is tension pulling the arm up into that position. It could be an everyday activity. If you've got your elbow, for whatever reason, up high or higher than the shoulder, or if you've got a lot of tension up in the trapezius, which is sort of bringing you up into here, sitting at desks, so on and so forth, that can cause a problem. So again, finding all that out during the assessment will help us with regards to what part of the posture we need to address, or part of the everyday lifestyle that we need to address. And then the second one is the stabilization of the shoulder. So what will tend to happen when muscles become tight and tense, instability will go down. So what we need to do is create that stability again. So if you have lost range of movement, create that range of movement again, and then build in the stability using stretches, using exercises, so on and so forth. So you can start to see how the treatments are put together. If you do experience shoulder impingement, or if you've just got pain in your shoulder, this would be the type of approach that I would take with regards to my sports massage therapy, going through the initial assessment consultation to find out where the problems are, then going through the at least 2 treatments, so the initial treatment and a follow-up, to be able to work through all these different muscles, all these different tissues, to be able to solve that problem. So if you have pain in the shoulder, you want to start getting it sorted out, then please do come and see me. The link will be in the description below, so you can just click on that and book yourself in. So yes, many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from Chris Fold Training. I look forward to seeing you at your first treatment.